And a very good morning to you. Welcome along to Tuesdays Off the Ball AM. As ever, if you want to get involved in the conversation, leave us a comment or ping us a message at Off the Ball AM on Twitter, or you can leave a comment on YouTube. We're on youtube.com/Off the Ball, and remember to click subscribe so you get notification of all our good stuff that we do here, because we do some good stuff here, don't we?
Occasionally, we're like on the off chance that we're feeling in the mood.
Huge game tonight, do or die in many ways. One of the most important games in football history. Republic of Ireland against Holland in Tallaght Stadium at 7 o'clock. It's really unfortunate this game is up against the biggest game in European football that people can remember in a long time in this part of the world.
Maybe it's unfortunate for the Champions League looking to kind of make inroads in Ireland. Not that it already hasn't kind of influenced our lives already in every minute way to this point, but that people might actually turn on the Ireland game because it's at 7 o'clock. It does get a 45-minute head start.
Yeah,
and who knows if Ireland go 1-0 up against Netherlands, despite the fact that Manchester City versus Liverpool is one of the most anticipated club games in the last 5 years. If Ireland are 1-0 up against the Netherlands, you've got dual screen action going on there at the very least.
Yeah, definitely. You can. That's the whole point of having a second screen, right?
Exactly. It'll be City on the iPad, Ireland on the big screen. It will be a really, really tricky one, though. I mean, getting the draw against Netherlands in the first game, and that is viewed as a huge result. And there is sort of, not that the team have come out sounding like they are settling for a draw tonight, but there is talk about Norway being the next game, and the fact that getting into the playoffs is a realistic possibility.
Yeah, the Dutch are the best team in the world, and we're on a 11 or 12 game winning streak until we scraped a 0-0 draw with them, and there was a pretty controversial decision at the end where they didn't get a penalty when one of our players body slammed one of their players to the ground. So I mean, it'll be a night of staunch defensive football from the Republic of Ireland, but all our great performances have been nights of staunch defensive football, right? Yeah,
this can be Ireland's version of Moscow. I mean, this campaign's version of Moscow is
giant stadium.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, I get. Yeah, all staunch defensive performances.
Time, obviously, but
yeah, well, I mean, they were all available on Really in the Years every single Sunday evening. You will always get a major Irish tournament somewhere on Irish television on a Sunday evening, no question about that. So, yeah, who knows? This could be something that we're looking back on. Like, if they win tonight, it is an absolutely extraordinary result. It will, of course, lead to Ireland being in a phenomenal position to qualify for a World Cup for the very first time, which obviously takes place next year. But just the significance of, as you say, beating the best team in the world.
Yeah, World Cup's in France as well, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
So another World Cup that Irish fans will actually be able to go to. Traditionally, we don't qualify for those tournaments because it'd be nice to be able to go to a tournament easily as opposed to having to travel 3/4 of the way around the world. But
yeah, I think that's kind of the last thing we're thinking about. There was, look, okay, let's face it. I mean, when it came to Russia this year, for example, we were talking about the moral equivalencies of actually travelling to Russia versus travelling to France in 2016, and that would have been more of a conversation. Yeah. Thankfully, it never came to that. So
exactly, we weren't put in that awkward position of having to go to Russia.
Yeah, big shout out to Ireland for helping us out in that one.
What have we got coming up? We're going to talk about that game a little bit later on with Ruth Fahy. That's around about 8:45. We'll also be talking to you a little bit later on with Johnny Liew of The Independent. Wrote an absolutely astonishing piece at full time in the first leg, the 3-0 win for Liverpool against Manchester City at Anfield. So we'll talk with Jonathan Liew a little bit later on about that, maybe around about 8:10. Now, though, it is time for the newspapers.
OTB AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.
We'll start with the Irish Independent this morning. It's the only newspaper that doesn't lead with Liverpool versus Manchester City. They're going with the Rory McIlroy angle this morning. McIlroy has mental block with Augusta. This is top psychologists believing the talent alone won't be enough for Hollywood star to claim green jacket. That's Dr. Gio Valiante, who was speaking on the Golf Channel, I think, yesterday, who says Augusta National can punish you if you play too aggressively, but also refers to McIlroy saying that he essentially endured 5 hours of choking at Augusta National on Sunday, and he could face years of Masters anguish if he doesn't improve his mental game shortcomings. So I guess everybody's cashing in on the Rory McIlroy failing bandwagon at this point. It's a high-profile name that is underachieving, so therefore I'm going to say something outrageous about him. And
why can't Rory get no love?
I don't know. Okay, so Were we not having a conversation just a couple of weeks ago on the show about how Rory has fixed his putting game after a couple of sessions with Brad Faxon?
I mean, he had, and he had a week of absolute sensational putting, and then he had three days of sensational putting this week, but the fourth day, the putting let him down.
It was a small sample size we were basing it on, just because he had done a couple of sessions with this putting guru, just because he had shown up in one weekend. Granted, he won the competition, but he'd shown up in sensational style to win a competition on the PGA Tour. It didn't necessarily say that he was going to be able to handle, the marble floor greens that exist at Augusta National.
But then he could for 3 days.
Okay, fair. But then he didn't hit any. He hit 8 greens in regulation on the Sunday. So there was other elements to this. It wasn't just his short game that. Well, it was. It was like essentially his approach shots, which let him down for half the round. And of course, with the putter in hand, he was a disaster on like 5 or 6 holes.
David Duval has said in a piece in one of the papers that he thinks that, he definitely has the game to win. I just don't think he's going to do it. He's going to find it very difficult to recover from this, and that he should have been taking driver out a bit more often than he did and actually going for it and using his competitive advantage too. And the third in particular, he was saying he should have just taken the driver out and belted it instead of... every single mistake he's ever made now gets parsed because he hasn't won. Whereas, because Spieth comes from way back on the last day, Spieth put himself in a position where he had to come from 9 shots back.
Yeah, talk about hindsight there. If you're Rory on the third tee, you've made up 2 shots on the second because Reid bogeyed, didn't he? Reid bogeyed, Rory birdied on the second hole, despite the fact that there was an eagle up there and he could have drawn level.
Yeah.
So, of course, there was a little bit of regret regarding that, but...
It was that killer instinct. It was also the point that, Rory decided that he was going to go out and put the pressure on Patrick Reed with the bravado, which was slightly unusual for him. But and then, obviously, Reed just fired back with, he's the one looking for the career Grand Slam, so, pressure. I don't know. Obviously, because he didn't win, everything he did was wrong. Whereas the truth is that there are a few things that went wrong. He didn't play well on Sunday. Playing well on Sunday is kind of the key thing.
Rory McIlroy, if you talk about people who went actually after the win, he went after the win straight away off the very first tee, and he skewed it completely right. He got very, very lucky there, so he's thinking to himself, right, okay, I got to relax a little bit. I'm going after this thing too hard.
Yeah.
So if David Duval is saying that on the third he needed to bring out the driver, I can't remember what club he used. What was it, a Treewood? I can't remember. I don't remember. But if he's saying that he needed to go after it a little bit harder, then screw that. I mean, he had just come off closing down the lead to 1 stroke after the second. So, I wouldn't blame him on that element of things. But as I say, a top psychologist does believe he's finished as a short game talent.
There's loads of Patrick Reed stuff in the papers today, and it's mostly the stuff about his family. I find a lot of this a little bit voyeuristic. It's like there's been a massive falling out. Some of the details, basically, Reed and his wife's family are now very closely aligned. As part of his entourage, his wife's brother is his caddy, and his wife's ma is somehow involved in helping to run the operation. And they seem like a very self-sufficient organisation that doesn't really take outsiders very much. His wife, sexistly, is referred to as feisty in the newspapers because, she represents the family in a certain way. But it is hard to watch, and it's hard to read all the details about his sister has been on social media talking about how the wife has split the family up, and Patrick has become selfish and self-indulgent, and it's and he had an amazing life, there was no abuse. It's just, it got really nasty really quickly, and frankly I don't really care about all that stuff. I mean, I care about the fact that he took a TUE and won straight away with the TUE, and that TUE ran out in 2017. We don't know if he's still on the medication. That's, to me, a far more interesting story than the personal soap opera voyeurism. Look at all that stuff over there. That's all a bit grim, isn't it? No thanks.
Pick any other golfer in the world, would we be getting this sort of insight into the failings of his relationship with his parents? Of course he wouldn't, because the world is up against Patrick Reed right now. It is Patrick Reed versus the world, and whether we like it or not, there is an element of an agenda against Patrick Reed. Because
if any golfer won, so I think if anybody wins, you just end up getting held up to a massive amount of scrutiny.
Okay, maybe. But there's only a handful of other golfers who would have faced something like that. Jordan Spieth wouldn't have faced that. Bubba Watson probably would have faced that if such problems existed in his personal life, which they don't. But I think there is only a handful of golfers which we would see these details thrown out there and discussed at large. And I certainly think Patrick Reed is one of those people. What we aren't discussing, by the way, is like in the wake of this Deadspin article and Shane Ryan's excerpts coming back up this week, it's just how terrible an alleged thief Patrick Reed is. Like, so it's one thing I forgot to say yesterday. This whole story about the wad of cash. Nobody's saying that Patrick Reed is a terrible thief, because if he is a thief, then that's exactly what he is. He is the worst thief in the history of mankind. As in the fact that he would steal a wad of cash off somebody and then walk into the dressing room the next day with the Rolex on the wrist and the wad of cash in the hand.
The Rolex wasn't on the wrist is the thing, isn't it? Isn't that it? It's like the Rolex disappeared.
Okay, well, either way, he's got a wad of cash in his hand, and it's a terrible excuse. That's what we need to be talking about. Patrick Reed, not the terrible family man, the terrible thief.
The issue is that he was asked, where did you get the money, Patrick? And he said, I won it from the college professor.
Don't bring in the money.
Fair enough, but when you've brought the money in, people go, where'd you get that? And he's like, I won it from a college professor. Not skins, what do you call it?
He's trying to hustle the professor, is what he said.
Professor, yeah. And so they went to the professor and went, I haven't played golf with him in 3 or 4 weeks. Now, if you're a college professor and you've just been hustled by a kid who's one of your students,
are
you going to fess up and go, yesterday. Yeah, I was doing that yesterday. I don't know. The story stinks, right? It stinks for Patrick Reed, and it stinks for the people who are, who have ganged up on him. Like a college frat team ganging up on the slightly weird, self-confident, quiet person. That's never happened in American sports. That's definitely never happened. So I don't know about that. But again, here we are feeding the voyeurism by going on and on about it.
That college professor just hates Patrick Reed. I was like, how will I get my revenge on him for, as you say, A, hustling me, and B, just for being a bit of a dick. I'm going to make sure your teammates hate you. That was a genius move from the professor, a not so genius move from Patrick Reed to bring the wad of cash into the dressing room the next day. But I'm sure he's learned from that. The Irish Times then, we're going to change to the football headlines now. Guardiola convinced City will create chances as he urges players not to give up. It is Manchester City chasing a 3-goal deficit as they come up against Liverpool in the second leg of their Champions League quarter-final this evening. The perfect game seems to be the quote that's doing the rounds everywhere, really, and that's the lead on the front of the Irish Examiner this morning. Pep Guardiola there kind of posing through gritted teeth. Guardiola believes extraordinary City can pull off the great escape. He has been talking up his team as well in the build-up to this game, saying that his team is extraordinary, that they are well capable of pulling this result off, and he is right. They do have that potential to put 5 goals past Liverpool, as they showed at the start of the season, but as Liverpool have also showed, they can put a couple past Manchester City themselves. So it's going to be a fascinating contest. And the back page of the Times Ireland edition talks about perfection. Guardiola wants perfection. Manager thinks history can galvanise City, as Salah is set to return for Liverpool. That is the big team news tonight, that Mo Salah is set to return for Jurgen Klopp's side. There he is on the back of the Irish Daily Mail as well, warming up alongside Virgil van Dijk. Hands up if you're fit to play, reads the headline, and beware of the thunderstorm. It'll be a torrid night, Klopp tells his stars. That's the headline on Dom King's story. And then finally for me, it's the back of the Herald. Klopp still wary. Pool boss hails outstanding City ahead of Etihad clash, while my team is top, says Pep. So I guess there's a bit of downplaying of chances from Jurgen Klopp and a bit of kind of whatever the opposite of that is by Pep Guardiola in the build-up to the game.
I got a bit distracted there. I'm reading about Conor McGregor's latest escapades. This is in the Star this morning and the New York Daily Post. So I don't know if you saw this story that Trump's personal lawyer yesterday had the FBI swoop in, a massive team of FBI lawyers swept into his office and took all his files. Big story. The paparazzi didn't notice this. In the same place, they were all in the lobby waiting for Conor McGregor to come back in after being arraigned in his assault trial. Everybody was kind of pointing out this kind of weird juxtaposition of Donald Trump, his lawyer, one of the biggest stories in the history of the world, and Conor McGregor's like puny little assault case that will probably end up making him an absolute fortune and Khabib an absolute fortune and the UFC an absolute fortune. I didn't realise that he didn't actually have the cash on him. I mean, I thought he always had 50 G's, baby, just knocking around. Here you go, judge. But they had to wait a couple of days to get the money wired from Ireland. So he paid 10% of the 50 grand, 5 grand, goes back to the hotel and, well, you're stuck in New York, you're really rich. What are you going to do? You're going to have a party. A businessman who is staying on the same floor as McGregor, has complained about the rowdy behaviour of McGregor and his entourage. And apparently somebody in the entourage has confirmed that, yes, he's sleeping till noon. That's what Conor's doing. He's sleeping till noon.
He is really crazy, our Conor McGregor. That's probably the rowdiest thing he's ever done, cause a disturbance on a hotel room floor.
There you go. His Brooklyn Rampage. Who's ready for Khabib versus McGregor? Who's ready for kebab versus McDonald's? Well, there you go.
Well, that is quite the face-off there, kebab versus McDonald's. McDonald's always wins, for the record.
He's at 5 takeaways. I get it now. I didn't get it. Right. 5 takeaways from Conor McGregor's Brooklyn Rampage.
Well, there, like, I mean, the puntastic nature of Off the Ball's followers kind of showing up right there.
Yeah.
Too puntastic for you, Ger, quite frankly.
Yeah. So I'm knee deep in this Conor McGregor story. How can I be expected to understand puns at the same time? A businessman who's staying at the Lowe's Regency in Park Avenue said he's fed up with McGregor's behaviour. He's in there causing trouble. I heard he was being rowdy last night. What do we expect?
Well, like Rowdy Conor McGregor maybe is going to become his new nickname, because he's really shown up in this latest instance that he's a very rowdy man, which we never knew before.
Thunderwall, Klopp is wary of City's goal threat. This is what Owen's just been talking about. And then golden moment for Irish legend's daughter, Mark Kinsella's daughter, Alice Kinsella, representing England in the Commonwealth Games, posing with her gold medal after winning on the beam. She's 17, and I guess if you're winning gold in the Commonwealth, you're heading to the Olympics at some point in the near future. Oh, okay. Also, this... wake me up when this one's over. Raymond Dominic wants the Ireland job. Screw you, Raymond. Screw you. You're not taking our money and you can't come here. Screw you. We don't want you. That's the only way to deal with that, right?
Yeah.
No. Don't even consider Raymond Dominic as Ireland manager for a second.
Well,
we need to burn this one really quickly.
It's not up to me to make this decision.
Well, it's up to all of us. We all have a role to play. We must all let Raymond Dominic know, screw you. We're not giving you anywhere near anything like control or interest. We're not entertaining the notion of you as being involved with Irish football. Screw you, Rowan Dominic.
The democratic nature of being involved with the FAI, that's what we're going to do. Just put it to a straw poll.
Yeah, and sorry, Mark McCadden has an exclusive here about Conte set to leave the bridge earlier than anticipated, so it'll happen before the end of the season, according to that piece there. Perfect storm. They need to be perfect. He thinks it's going to be a storm, perfect storm. He puts the two together. That's how headlines work. Apparently Marcus Rashford is pissed off at the lack of game time. That's on the back of the mirror there as well. Thunder attack. Klopp will face City onslaught. Pep, my team is extraordinary. His team is extraordinary. I wonder, in a weird way, was the fluky 3-2 win for Manchester United at the weekend the best possible result in the long term for Manchester City? It wakes them up. It makes them the absence of complacency. It guarantees another season of Jose Mourinho. Another season of that mess. Another season of that, I'm not really quite sure what I want us to be. I'd like us to play with some attacking flair. I'd like us to have some superstars in the team with massive YouTube accounts and Twitter followers. But I haven't built a team here, have I?
I'd take the second part of that, because we should all want Jose Mourinho around just to add a little bit of sourness to the Premier League, because everything needs a bit of sourness in life, and Jose Mourinho is bringing that in absolute spadefuls at the moment. But the first part of that, if Manchester City are going into this game complacent,
this game into the rest of their they're building an empire. They're building the best team in Europe that's going to win 3 Champions Leagues over a 5 or 6 year period, right? That's what the project has to be. They're aspiring for the greatest team of all time. They're not trying to be like the first team to just win the Champions League once and then not do it again. It's Guardiola. Like, he hasn't come here and spent $500 million to win a league, another league, and a Champions League. He's got to build a dynasty.
Yeah,
so
it is Guardiola. He's a man who doesn't get complacent. He's a man who doesn't need one result to go against him for him to suddenly feel, do you know what, this is going to perk me up really, right away, you know.
That team coasting through 2-0, it was so easy for them that they couldn't stay concentrated in the second half against Manchester United at home to win the league. They needed to kick up the hole.
No, it isn't.
And they got it.
Well, they got it last week against Liverpool, and that's all they needed.
Well, the Liverpool thing is just, that's going to happen to you. But the complacency against Manchester United, that was different.
It was also a bit of a freak result. Let's call a spade here. The complacency should never have even been a factor in it, because Manchester City could have been 4 or 5 goals up by half time. So, this may or may not have been a factor. I don't buy it, quite frankly. I don't buy that Pep Guardiola needs any sort of kick in the behind.
The
players.
team.
Like, look at Vincent Kompany when he celebrates his goal at the weekend.
Look at Vincent Kompany. What the hell is he doing in that second half? Look at him. Like, completely out of position, not being a leader. Like, why is the ball at Vincent Kompany's feet when you're chasing a goal with 5 minutes left to go as well? And he's like looping these crappy balls out to the left wing.
Well, I know I've been accosted by Kevin Kilban on this programme before for suggesting that Vincent Kompany isn't the player he once was. So I wouldn't dare go down that garden path again for fear that, I actually get hung out to dry. He's listening in and calls in or anything like that.
Let him call. I think you're right.
But I think there is an element of that in it rather than complacency that maybe, and I've got to be very careful here, Vincent Kompany might not be as good as he once was.
Right, a quick comment from Digger. Good morning to you. I hope you're well. Even if Reid's family were right originally, they've now lost the moral high ground by running constantly to the press. Regarding Rory, he said himself 2 years ago he has a block regarding the Masters. Every year that goes by, it'll become more Lendl and Wimbledon and Jimmy White. Jimmy White in the Crucible, of course. Let's move on. The rest of the newspaper is pretty much following the same template this morning. But let's move on because we're going to talk about this game now. Obviously, it's absolutely huge match last night. Pat Nevin was on with Joe. Here's what he thinks is going to happen tonight.
I think anything's capable. If it was 2-0, I would say this game's absolutely in a balance. I'd go as far as saying that.
Yeah.
But 3-0 is just that little bit more. It just means something very, very different. It will depend on the absolute fitness of Aguero. I'm sure De Bruyne is going to be up for it. Silva back as well. He needs to get his defence playing at the skin, which they haven't been doing recently. They've got one or two weaknesses there. There's a lot of ifs and buts with Manchester City in this one. The smart money's on Liverpool getting it, and maybe in a 3-1 or something like that, or even maybe a 4-1. I wouldn't be surprised at that. But for Manchester City to come back from this, and they'll be holding on to things like, early in the season, Liverpool playing against Seville were 3 up at half-time in Seville, and they drew 3-3. It's not beyond the bounds of possibility. And the one team, I'm going to say, the one team this season, but the one team for many, many years in the Premier League that's capable of doing it is Manchester City. They're the team and the type of football do it. And I suspect they'll make enough chances to do it. I actually do. But where they'll take all those chances will be down to whether, the likes of Van Dijk's absolutely up for his game and the likes of the goalkeeper Karius has a good one.
Pat Nevin speaking with Joe Malloy last night on Off the Ball. Now, Jonathan Liew, the chief sports writer of The Independent, is with us. Good morning to you, Jonathan.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, well, so the wait is nearly over. Your piece last week rang a lot of bells for loads of people at the Full-Time Report. Stunning work, so congratulations on that. But one of the main themes of it was the incorrigible wait and the need for people to have faith. Can Liverpool fans have faith that this job is nearly done?
I think it's nearly done. I think Liverpool fans will certainly have probably a good deal more than faith, actually. They'll have belief, they might even have an expectation. The prospect of this tie going against them now is something that I think a lot of Liverpool fans won't even dare to contemplate. And it shouldn't, essentially. The fact that Liverpool only need one goal and City will need 5 means that City will kind of have to play the perfect game, as Guardiola said in his press conference yesterday. And the fact that this Liverpool team generally will attack despite the situation of the game means that goal should be fairly easy to get for them. And City aren't a side that keep a huge amount of clean sheets for all their dominance in the Premier League. It is one of those ties that is hugely stacked in the favour of the visitors tonight.
And yet, if you're a Manchester City fan, all you have to do is look to the first 45 minutes at the weekend against Manchester United when they did play a perfect game and they could have scored 4 goals. They managed 2, which if they managed again in the first half tonight, they'd be pretty happy and feeling pretty good about life.
It's been one of the traits of this Guardiola side, as brilliant as it has been all season, that it has had these occasional lapses in concentration where they've conceded not just 1 but sometimes 2 or 3 goals. Obviously they can't afford anything like that tonight, and I suspect they'll be looking more to the performance against Arsenal, the 2 wins that they had earlier this year, as a kind of template of what they'd be hoping to achieve.
In terms of the way the 2 teams line up, do you expect anything slightly different from Guardiola? It almost felt a little bit like he was preparing the team for the onslaught against Liverpool as opposed to putting the team out with his own first principles at mind in the Anfield game. And obviously that won't happen again tonight because they're chasing the game and it clearly wasn't the right decision in the first place. So in terms of selection, are there any nuances that you expect, any wrinkles tonight from Manchester City?
It's a good point you make, actually, because Guardiola he does have a tendency in these big European games to try something rather than kind of sticking with the tried and tested formula that's got them so much success in the league. We saw last week that he brought in Gundogan for Sterling, which I guess didn't really work out. He tried that extra central midfielder, which kind of left them all crowded, and it really sort of disjointed them. And it's something that Guardiola's done, all the way going back to Barcelona. When it comes to a big European game, he's almost tried to get a little bit too clever for himself. I actually don't expect that so much simply because their task is so simple, and the style of football they've been playing is exactly the sort of style of football that they need to be playing to pull this tie out of the bag. So I kind of expect them to line up pretty much how they've been lining. There were a lot of changes for the United game, but I imagine it'll be a pretty full strength City side in the kind of 4-3-3 that we've known them.
Jonathan, why do you think that Pep is likely to overthink things in this manner? It's clearly not a trust issue, clearly, because you look at the quotes in the paper this week and this morning, and clearly he backs his team to the nth degree. Is it just a matter of over-analysis, do you feel?
I think overthinking it is part of it. I mean, the amount of thinking, the amount of analysis that he puts into every single facet of his job, I think sometimes means that when it comes to these big showpiece games, he kind of ties himself in knots, and almost it doesn't feel like the simplest solution can be the best, even though that's the very principle that underlines, most of his philosophy. I think part of it also is certainly in this tie is his kind of Klopp complex, as it were. He's got a poor record against Liverpool and against Dortmund when Klopp was there, and I suspect part of it was the fear of the Liverpool counter-attack. I mean, one of the things about Guardiola, and it's not unique to him at all, is that he is absolutely terrified of getting counter-attacked. And when you're coming up against the team that's probably as good at doing it as any in Europe, maybe that does kind of addle your thinking a little bit. Again, I don't expect him to make the same mistake twice, because he doesn't tend to, he tends to learn pretty quickly from his mistakes as well.
Even within a brilliant performance at Anfield from Liverpool, there was a period in the second half where it felt like, not that Liverpool were hanging on, but that they weren't as self-confident and brash and as clearly committed to the attack as they had been in that first half. It's natural, you're 3-0 up, you have this amazing result and you want to protect it a little bit. And you think of Milner hoofing the ball forward, and it's natural that there will be a little bit of that for them tonight as well. I know the point you made that they will naturally attack because that's their game plan, but there's definitely going to be more reservation about that attack tonight.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in the second half at Anfield, I think we barely saw Liverpool have a chance. I mean, they defended superbly. They defended really well, and that's as well as they're going to have to defend again tonight. But there is a danger there, because Klopp sides, as we all know, are based on forward momentum, forward motion, attack not just being a form of defence, but attack essentially being the defence, that first line. We saw it dropping in the second half at Anfield, and if it turns into one of those games where they have to play an 80 or 90 minute rear guard, then it's going to become very dicey for them. I mean, I still think they'll come through, but if, say, City if it's still 0-0 with half an hour to go, and then City burgle a goal, and then suddenly it's back to the wall. The momentum that we saw at Anfield can very easily switch against them. That's the sort of hope that City fans will be clinging to tonight.
Yeah, and I do also wonder how easy it is for somebody like Mohamed Salah to run off a groin strain. He came off really quickly as soon as he realised he had it. They obviously weren't going to risk him at the weekend. We saw some shots of him jogging lightly in training yesterday, but history would tell you that a groin strain, it can affect a player, and if he's not actually playing fully, then they're a different team, and if he's not playing at all, then they're a completely different side.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're a different side without him, just because he almost performs three functions in one. Not only is he their main goal threat and their main sort of creative talent, but he's also one of their main ball winners. I mean, him and Mane and Firmino, their work off the ball is pretty well documented. But he's one of the best at actually winning the ball back. I think there's a certain element of wish fulfillment here. Nobody really knows, apart from the Liverpool medical department and possibly the squad, exactly what sort of condition he's in. But I think that the photos and the video released of him training ahead of this game is almost kind of a morale booster, like one of those World War II propaganda films where you'd show the troops in fine fettle, even though they'd just been decimated. I think it's one of those where he could start and last 10 minutes, and it turned out that everyone was just being very optimistic, or it could be one of those where it literally wasn't that bad, and they just could have took him off as a precaution, left him at the Everton game, but we won't really know until he comes on the field. But certainly Liverpool fans will be pretty excited about the prospect of seeing him on the pitch.
It's a remarkable thing when you think about the spectrum of this fixture, even in just this season alone, from the 5-0 early in the season to the 3-0 last week. So you've got an 8-goal swing there in the space of one season. Granted, there was crazy things that happened individually in those games that it's not really an 8-goal swing. But like you think about it, then you think about the addition of Virgil van Dijk into the Liverpool defence and potentially just the footballing brain that he's got, and coming up against that front three in training. How big a thing do you feel that is coming up against this City attack?
Well, I think if you look at those, I suppose the 3 Liverpool City games this season, it's almost been a story of Liverpool's evolution. I mean, earlier in the season we were talking about how they can't defend and how they're terrible at set pieces, and Klopp was basically having to defend his side every single week, even when they'd won. And I'm a huge fan of Van Dijk, and I think the fact that Liverpool was so keen to get the deal done in January was an indication of how they felt he could make such an instant impact, and he really does. He's coolness personified. I think I read somebody in the Guardian last week saying Van Dijk plays football at a resting heart rate, and so as well as his incredible pace, his athleticism, his goal threat at set pieces, which I think over the course of his Liverpool career we'll see him score quite a few goals as well. Apart from all of that, his technical gifts, he does offer a sort of calmness that they maybe weren't getting with in the last couple of seasons. And when you're defending in a game like this, when you're playing 30% possession, 40% possession, and your back's to the wall, you do need somebody who can marshal a defence, not just technically but also psychologically. He's going to be a key player.
On a more macro level, what does that first leg say about where Liverpool are under Klopp at the moment, and how important is it that they make sure that they continue to invest and that he stays, and that this is a long-term thing as opposed to some kind of stepping stone for him to another job back in Germany, for example?
Yeah, well, Klopp's projects have always been long-term. I think it's 7 years at Mainz, it was 7 years at Dortmund. All the signals are that he's found his happy place at Anfield. I guess the Bayern Munich job will come up, and he'll be mentioned for that, but I don't really see that happening. I mean, I suppose the first leg didn't tell us a huge amount about Liverpool that we didn't already know, that they can, when they turn it on, play exceptionally good stuff, that Liverpool's top level is right up there with the best sides in Europe. I suppose what we need to see from them, in the summer and next season is the kind of, they need to add a little bit of meat to the bones. And again, this season they've dropped a few too many points against teams lower down in the table, and they've occasionally struggled to break down deep lying defences. That kind of stuff, we knew about them already, but I think they're going to have to kick on another level next season. Naby Keita is going to come in the summer from Leipzig, and he's going to give them a little bit of assurance in midfield, because a lot of the times you look at that midfield and it's competent without looking that dynamic. And I suppose the arrival of Keita will kind of hopefully bring them to the next level in terms of whether they can make a real challenge for the Premier League next season.
I was wondering about that. I mean, does the strata of spending that Manchester City are at almost guarantee that they will always have a squad big enough to have a campaign in Europe and be able to sustain a proper title challenge? Or is it possible for a club like Liverpool to actually sustain a title challenge and be competitive in Europe at the same time?
That's a good point, actually. I mean, we've seen Chelsea struggling this season. City are increasingly built to fight on 3 or 4 fronts. I mean, their squad, even though it's not huge, is it's well packed enough to be able to cope with the stresses of 3 or 4 competitions. Liverpool don't have those finances. We all know that. They had to essentially sell Coutinho in January to kind of release the funds to buy Keita in the summer and Van Dijk in January as well. Their net spend is basically a fraction of what City's is. And I mean, the other thing about it is that Klopp doesn't want a huge squad. He doesn't want sort of 10, 12, 15 players, strolling around the place if they're not, really sort of, challenging for a first team place. So as well as the finances of it, and as the kind of the style of squad that Klopp likes to manage is also going to have an impact on that. But obviously they're going to need to fill out the squad a little bit in the summer. The danger is that it becomes something like what happened with Brendan Rodgers in 2014, where he basically bought 6 or 7 players and totally disrupted the harmony of the squad, and kind of went downhill from there for him.
Just speaking of squad management there, Jonathan, like the one line that stuck out to me from Pep, one of many lines that stuck out this week, was the fact that he called his team extraordinary. He says, "My team are extraordinary," and he's clearly taking what happened last week and putting it on his own shoulders. And it seemed, those quotes told me that this is kind of a hit to the players' egos rather than the result itself damaging their potential advancing in the competition.
Yeah, I mean, Pep Guardiola is an absolute, he's absolute master at this. I remember there was a game against Liverpool last season. It was a draw. It was a 1-1 draw or a 2-2 draw, and he said it was the best performance he'd seen. And I am so happy. I am so happy. These players make me so happy. I'm delighted. We're extraordinary. And part of it is there's this kind of self-caudology going on there. The best managers these days don't just have to be tactically astute and technically excellent, but they almost kind of need to be evangelists. And in order to get the sort of performance out of his side that is going to, turn this tie around, Guardiola kind of does have to persuade his players that they are capable of something superhuman.
Because ultimately, I guess, when you look at Pep Guardiola, as an individual, he's a man of the big European night. He's got pedigree in this regard, whereas ultimately his players don't.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I mean, a lot of his players have been signed from smaller clubs where they haven't necessarily had that sort of Champions League experience. It's a worry for them, I guess, that City haven't got past this stage. Sorry, they haven't got past the semi-final stage at all. That a lot of their players haven't played, the finals and big Champions League finals, big World Cup finals that that really give you experience of playing these big games. But there's no real way of giving these players experience except by going into one of these games and actually winning it.
Talking again about the length of the project, we've seen with Guardiola that there is a shorter lifespan, certainly so far, in terms of the pressure that he felt at Barcelona, and the fit at Bayern didn't seem right. Is he in a job where there is the potential for this to last a little bit longer? And you look at the trio that started for City in the Anfield game, where as their attackers were like 21, 20 and 22, and you feel like if he keeps this team together and sits it out for the next 3 to 4 years, that they're going to be a European superpower, and that Champions League success will come on the back of a failure, say, at this point, that next season they will go into that entire competition knowing what it takes to go to Anfield or wherever and not get battered 3-0. Do you feel like this Guardiola thing will last a bit longer?
Well, the team itself is totally transformed. It's easy to forget just how many players Guardiola's shifted out in his kind of 18 months, 2 years in the job. The team he inherited was like Hart and Zabaleta and Kolarov, and it's been completely transformed. Whether Guardiola stays for the project, I'm slightly more sceptical of. I mean, I think behind the scenes at City, the likes of Soriano and Cheeky Begiristain are kind of mounting a keep Pep campaign of the sort of magnitude which they used to get him to the club in the first place. But I think Guardiola himself is pretty clear that his fuse, I think, at a certain club only has a certain amount of time to run. He was very stubborn about like, this is my time at Bayern, and ultimately I think the club and the fans were kind of happy to see him go. And I wonder if it's his style of management which is so entirely exhaustive, so transformative, really does have a kind of finite lifespan. Whether, to quote Robert Blake on Benjamin Disraeli, eventually people tire of being changed. And I think we'll get a slightly clearer picture of that this time next year, because these things do turn very quickly, and fatigue becomes an issue, mental fatigue, becomes an issue. And we'll see what happens next year. But I personally don't. I think City would be very lucky to get a fourth season out of him, and that we're already probably in the second half of the Guardiola reign.
That feels like a real pity to me, because the quality of football that the team has produced and the ability that they have to just make the ground pulse is something that you don't see that very often, and it'd be a real shame if it doesn't quite reach its peak, if it doesn't actually fully fulfill its potential under Guardiola.
Well, you could argue that that didn't happen at Bayern, and if they don't make it through tonight, it won't have happened at City. I think it's hard to keep revolutionising a team for 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, the way that he works is it almost relies on being like getting a cutting edge, and it's really hard to keep finding those cutting edges with the same players. And a situation like Pochettino at Tottenham, where clearly it's the same group of players and they're playing together for 3 or 4 years. I'm not sure that's even possible at a side like City, where they're fighting on so many different fronts. They've got so many A-list players who will all kind of demand to play at the same time, that I think naturally the churn will be a lot higher than it is at a slightly smaller club like Tottenham. Yeah, I mean, it would be a shame, and I think you could argue that Bayern team didn't really fulfil its potential. But I think that the football that City are playing this season certainly feels like the pinnacle of something.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't necessarily get them all the trophies.
Hopefully it lasts a little bit longer. Jonathan, it does sound like you expect Liverpool to go through, but you do also expect them to concede a number of goals tonight.
Well, I think it's a danger. I think 1 brings 2, brings 3, but just as it did for Liverpool on the first leg. I think Liverpool's approach, which Klopp said, will be aggressive, will be key. I mean, Liverpool can't just sit back for 90 minutes and hope that City don't hurt them too much, because once City get 1 or 2 goals, once the Etihad gets going, which I've heard it can do, it's been known, then suddenly you've got a completely different tie.
Good stuff. Enjoy the game. Thanks a million for joining us.
Cheers.
Jonathan Liew giving us his pre-match thoughts from the Independent there.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. Like, when you look at Pep and a couple of the different nuggets of wisdom that he's brought out through the years that have been kind of rehashed in the newspapers this morning, the one that sticks out to me is Sam Wallace in the Telegraph talking about Pep in his second book, saying that his relationship with defeat is very interesting. He talks about the fact that at least I choose how I lose. At least I've got that string to my bow, that I can actually decide how I'm going to fall to defeat. And if he's still got that mentality, which I'm sure he does, then you can certainly see Manchester City going after that early goal hell for leather tonight, which they are going to do.
That first 20 minutes is going to be brilliant
is.
tonight. Like, absolutely brilliant. And if they score, it's going to be amazing. And there's a good chance they will score. I think there's a good chance they're 2-0 up at half time.
A goal glut is always possible at Manchester City, particularly when it's not at Anfield. It's nothing to do with this being at home for Manchester City. It's just because they don't have Anfield up against them tonight, which I think is a bigger thing. Like, I guess these goal gluts have become more of a likely occurrence than an anomaly at this point for Manchester City, which just makes an early goal such an enticing prospect that if it does go in, you're thinking to yourself, right, this is a fairly even contest right now. Anything could happen.
City are 4-1 to go through.
That's a good bet.
It's not a great bet, but it's not a bad bet. You can see multiple ways in which it happens. Like an early red card for Liverpool, very possible. An early goal /2 for Manchester City, very possible. No early goal, but tight up until the 60th minute, and then they burgle a goal, as Jonathan Liew said, and suddenly it's like, uh-oh.
What if Liverpool get that early goal?
Well, no, it's game over. Liverpool are through.
City won't score 5?
I don't think so. I mean, you can see them getting, if Liverpool get an early goal, you can see City getting 4 over the course of 96 or 97 minutes. But I don't know. It should be an amazing game.
I expect Manchester City to actually go after Trent Alexander-Arnold to start once again tonight. I think we had this conversation with Kenny Cunningham last Friday, and City just played out really poorly last week. That clearly they told Leroy Sané that you can take this guy on and you're going to beat him on a one-on-one. Whereas in actual fact, if they set up like they always set up, it wouldn't have just been a one-on-one. It could have been a two-on-one in some situations. He could have had Kevin De Bruyne or David Silva in that more central role, but also to the left-hand side, which would have given Sané a little bit of help, or given Alexander-Arnold something else to think about. If they go back to that sort of technique tonight, then it could be very, very profitable for them. So I don't think it'd be the most stupid thing in the world for them to target the left wing once again. I think, especially someone like Leroy Sané thinking to himself, give me another go at this kid.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that he's a kid himself.
Fooled me once. At Right Said Dread on Twitter says, part of me thinks the City put out a good team with their best on the bench, and if 1-0 at half-time, bring on the heavy hitters to go for the throat. Otherwise, play it out, rest up for the weekend, which is pragmatic. Very Pep. Like,
Liverpool fan right there.
I don't know about resting up for the weekend. I think that this is do or die tonight. This is like
what are they chasing in the Premier League? Like, is there still the best ever Premier League season ever on the line?
I don't think so anymore. No.
Like I think after,
even if there is, who cares?
Exactly. Who cares is right. Although Pep probably cares. Pep cares about every little minute. He wants the most shots on target, the most expected goals ever in a Premier League season. That probably gets Pep's juices running a little bit, doesn't it?
Maybe.
Like the fact is, like,
think about Pep's juices.
Well, he's clearly a very passionate man, and he speaks about it essentially all the time himself.
Yeah, all right.
You know, the XG category of
nice image that Eoin has given you over your breakfast this morning.
Yeah, well, you know.
So Shane Ryan was on Off the Ball last night talking about Patrick Reed. He's the guy who did the interview as part of his book that ended up on Deadspin. That was like one of the major, really the foundational text in everybody learning about just what of a jerk Patrick Reed is.
Yeah, so it was interesting. So the original thing when we started the interview is he said, Justine's going to be with me. Is that okay? Justine, his wife. And I'd already heard rumors that this was kind of a controlling person. And so immediately I knew to say, yeah, of course, because if I had said no, I think there would have been no interview. And I included her on the conversation, and I found them both. I liked talking to them, and they didn't behave like it was a big chore to talk to me. And Patrick Reed enjoys telling stories of his competitive play. You can tell he takes a lot of pride in it. He probably, like you said, over-identifies with himself as a golfer. But it was fun to listen to his stories. I found Justine warm enough. I liked her. I liked them within that short context.
Sure.
But the broader thing was that, yes, I even at the time, I knew they were telling me some fibs. And they were presenting themselves in a way that felt a little bit fake to me, and in a way that I wanted to crack through, but could tell that they were very committed to this performance in a way that I wasn't going to break in an hour. Forget it. Nobody's that good.
Yeah.
And so I left thinking like, yeah, I got a certain story from them. I got a lot of useful information. They seemed like nice people, but also they weren't presenting themselves with any kind of openness, any kind of real openness to the reporter they'd never met.
You know, which is fair enough. That's Shane Ryan rocking the nicest mic that we've seen anybody rocking in their spare room.
Yeah, don't be ashamed of your microphone is what we tell everybody. Yeah. And, you know, he's certainly proud of it. Front and centre, I'm Shane Ryan, and this is my microphone.
I'm doing a lot of this stuff, obviously.
Yeah, like, clearly. In
voiceover, you know.
I wonder, is it a spare room? Or is he just a man of very plain tastes?
No bedspread.
Maybe it's just in the wash.
Could be. I mean, it could be.
It's just like white walls, white everything. It's just... You know, I like my life very plain, and I wash my bedclothes every day. Maybe that's just the life he leads.
You should get him on and ask him about that. You know, part of me does wonder about, like, if you are the Reeds and you have this family drama in your background, it's like, screw you, I'm not telling you anything about this. None of your business.
Yeah, like, I mean, what other parents of golfers do you care about? We care about the Reeds now, don't we? Like, they've got a bit of profile out of this, just to be very cynical.
I mean, it is fair enough for us not to pry into people's private lives, I think, especially when they're not actually the people who are doing the stuff, right?
The reason why the prying has happened, and to go back to the point at the top of the show, is because it's Patrick Reed.
What's your point about that, though?
Because people don't like Patrick Reed. I mean, it wouldn't have been pushed.
It's because he's not nice.
Yeah.
And he's got a reputation for being a bad person.
Yes, and every small... minute detail that's out there, it's like, look at this salacious thing about Patrick Reed.
But that's actually just celebrity culture these days. That's just the aspect of all of these people who So it just turns out that there's nothing salacious in the background of anybody else.
But take the Aaron Rodgers situation, for example, who has... there has been talk of similar problems in his family life.
His brother went on The Bachelor and it was all everybody talked about.
Yeah, okay, fair point. Fair point. But The Bachelor is like the biggest show in the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, Patrick Reed's parents aren't going on reality TV shows.
Well, here's the thing. There will be an offer to Patrick Reed's parents to do that and to go on Oprah / whoever that daytime TV is, and the money will be huge. And so that's where this gets to. Like, this constant rubbernecking at other people's shit lives, or the shit in people's lives. Their lives aren't shit. I meant the shit that goes on in their lives. That leads us to a position where they're all momentary on TV talking about stuff that makes everybody squirm. It's like, that part of Patrick Reed's life, the bit with his family, the bit where he's been accused of cheating, let's talk about that for sure. The bit where he was accused of being a thief, let's talk about that. But I don't know. Yeah,
I'd agree. I'd still maintain, though, that there is kind of an anti-Patrick Reed...
There is, yeah.
...tone out there.
But I think there's probably an anti-everybody tone when there's a little bit of something there. If there's the media will pile in, we will pile in behind any negativity to go, look at this. I mean, I'm far more interested in the fact that he's taken this drug, which makes him... that he has in the past taken this drug, which makes him better able to concentrate. And as soon as he started taking it, he started to win.
Yeah, I wonder, is the publicity around Patrick Reed's family to do with this idea that it's a symptom or that it's actually a cause of the character that Patrick Reed is? Are people trying to suggest that, look at the troubled character that Patrick Reed is? He's been accused of cheating, he's been accused of thieving, he's been accused of potentially hustling a professor, most seriously of all.
Turning his back on his family.
Is this because of problems in his family? What kind of background did Patrick Reed grow up in? Were his parents mean to him? Blah, blah, blah. Or is it because Patrick Reed is this alleged thief, therefore he has subsequently alienated his family? So what is the tone out there? I'm not sure what it is, and I just think that there's a little bit of prying going on because people don't like Patrick Reed. People don't like the fact that he's the new Masters champion. On top of the Empire State Building, actually, yesterday, with his green jacket.
Is that? I think that's traditional, is it?
Is it, yeah?
I think this is
straight up to New York. He doesn't like heights.
The US Open winner does one of the Saturday night talk shows.
Okay.
The following week, maybe Jimmy Kimmel. I want to say Jimmy Kimmel. But obviously, and so there's all these things that you just end up doing.
Yeah, but he said he doesn't like heights, kind of speaking through those gritted lower teeth once again, saying that, but it's okay, I'm a Master champion. He seems really happy. He seems, I dare say, humble.
And seems well balanced for somebody who has this kind of massive gaping chasm in his life.
Yeah, or maybe Patrick Reed has just grown up. Maybe he doesn't do these things that he used to do.
Maybe his parents were assholes, who knows?
Maybe. This is what I'm trying to say. We're maybe reading a little bit too much into this and prying a little bit too much, but
all right.
It's fun.
Where are we going next?
We're going to talk about some of the stories in the newspapers. One of the stories that's been doing the rounds over the last 24 hours is the Dublin banner. It is the latest in a series of great stories about the Dubs that doesn't involve the Dubs one bit. And it is about this banner on the...
To get the Dubs, though. That's what this involves, right? Everybody hates this Dublin team.
Yeah, and here is an ugly banner on... Not a very... do you like the Halfpenny Bridge?
I like the Halfpenny Bridge, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it gets treated really badly.
Yes.
Those locks. I mean, screw those locks.
Yeah, there is that. So basically, people haven't heard about what has happened here.
Are you coming here pissing on the Halfpenny Bridge? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not. I'm a big fan of the Halfpenny Bridge.
Here's a picture of it. Dublin City supporting the Dubs in a gaudy plastic, not quite Comic Sans, but not far off it font.
Yeah, that's exactly... I think that it's actually a problem for a lot of people. It's just because of how it looks. It has nothing to do with the sentiment of supporting the Dubs because, it is Dublin City. Dublin City is more than entitled to get behind its football team, particularly because it's one of the greatest sports teams we've seen in Ireland. And more good luck to them, basically. But I think there's just a general...
and here's a picture. Tommy Rooney, photographer, he's delighted with himself. Look, I took this. And the banner's gone. It's been taken down.
Yeah. Is it to do with kind of just being unsightly? Probably.
Or is it snobbishness? Is it anti-GAA biased from within Dublin City Council?
Well, everything in the GAA is ugly, according to some snobs, some kind of snobs who've got a better eye for art than I would, for example. Maybe they could come up with a better looking banner, but at the same time, I like the sentiment. I like the sentiment of Dublin City Council getting behind their team.
Yeah.
Like
how else should they do it?
Well, I don't know. Maybe they put up like a big umbrella of flags on O'Connell Street come All Ireland final week, and it's like
there's loads of stuff they could do.
Mayo and Kerry people, you're getting to Lewis and Abbey Street. Well, screw you. You're going to be intimidated as soon as you walk onto O'Connell Street. Here's just a sea of blue above your heads. Maybe they should just go hell for leather on all of this thing, because whatever they can do to try and influence some sort of atmosphere around the Dubs is a good thing. Like this is the reason why back in 2000 or 2001 the GAA wanted to make the Dubs a monster, because you had this huge population of people who would support Gaelic games.
Do they still park cars in the in off Clonliffe Road, or can you get down that far anymore to park in there?
I'm pretty sure you can.
Yeah, because the barriers are up at so do you have to get in really early to park there?
Yeah, you would, yeah. But I think most people now, the tactic for driving to Dublin now is certainly the Red Car roundabout, get the Lewis in, or maybe even Maynooth and get a commuter train in to Drumcondra. But Clonliffe Road is a classic tactic.
Yeah, so wouldn't it be much better if they stopped parking there and had massive parties there, like tailgating, except without, you don't actually have to drive your 4x4 in, unpack it, and it's like, here are a bunch of stalls, here is a skill zone, here's a live show happening.
It's a good idea, but you're forgetting that Irish people are very stubborn folk, Ger. Like, you're not going to move me from the Gresham on All Ireland final day. You're not going to move me from the Croke Park Hotel. You're not going to move the Dubs from the Old Triangle or wherever they go.
Hotel's only 10 years old.
That's a good point.
So it's a new tradition.
It is, but it's my tradition.
Here's another one over here.
Yeah.
We'll have cooked pig products, nice, multiple types.
Yeah, and it is a very good idea, don't get me wrong, but it's something that they would just die for in America, and I don't think that the Irish people would take to it too kindly. Maybe they would, and maybe it becomes a Dubs only zone and intimidate the visiting fans further.
Yeah.
It's like, this is for Dublin only.
Yeah.
You're coming to our city. You're going to try and take our All Ireland off us. No way. We're going to become the best football team ever.
Great pictures in the papers today of CJ Stander and his mum and dad from their farm. John Fallon visited the farm from George in South Africa, and it's a big old farm, employ 100 people, is that it? And they make cauliflowers and avocados, as well as cows, and it's just a great story. Two athletes. His dad was a 400-metre runner. His dad was a winger, even though he's actually bigger than CJ, like a good bit bigger than CJ, and he was a winger in South Africa. So better pictures in the Examiner, more of them.
Yeah, well, you do realise there, you said they make cauliflowers, they make avocados and cows. They make cows in this place. They just plant a cow seed and up springs a cow. They've got special seeds down in South Africa.
Do you think, well, you do need to make cows, you do need to breed them.
Yeah, you need to breed
them together.
Yeah, but like, I mean,
there's
just the way you said
husbandry
it.
involved in that.
Anyway, I'm getting into the nitty gritty here. Yes, his father was a winger, and his father is, I would say, about 3 inches taller than CJ Stander. Talks about kind of the exportation of CJ Stander, because his coaches wanted to turn him into a hooker, and Munster was like, actually no, we want to sign this guy, and he can stay as back row. And that's what happened. His father did fly to Ireland a couple of times. He spent a lot of money, he said, on trying to actually scout out Munster and seeing if Ireland was the place for CJ. And, we're obviously very thankful for the talents of CJ Stander. It also seems that the Stander family is very thankful for, the talents of Joe Schmidt and the talents of those people involved in Munster rugby that have kind of allowed CJ Stander to make a home for himself and make a big name for himself.
Yeah, and they mentioned the Lions in 3 years' time as well. There's a picture from the farm that it's in South Africa. I've kind of forgotten, because obviously you really only want the Lions to be in New Zealand from now on. It's like the Lions versus New Zealand every 4 years, happy days. This is a good idea. And we're going to go to New Zealand and we're going to crush them. It'll be probably 2-1. They'll win the first game, and then we'll get our first best team out. But it'll be important for CJ, because obviously he'll be going back with the Lions potentially as their first choice number 8.
Yeah, true. There's a nice anecdote about
Vunipola probably will be if he's fit, but anyway, if he shows up.
Well, there is that. You forget about Billy Vunipola to a certain extent. But like, he talks about going to Ireland for the first time, his father that is, in 1972, and seeing snow for the very first time when he actually went to Ireland. So there's kind of like a little bit of a full circle there, given the weather we've had in 2018. In terms of the vegetables you're trying to think of, it's broccoli and cauliflower, and they pick it every Monday, Wednesday and Friday throughout the year to supply a contract to Woolworths. And they finally made it up to Ireland a year ago to actually watch CJ play. It's a nice story. It's 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 one that wouldn't have happened were it not for the addition, obviously, of the South African teams to the Pro 14. And there's a lot of criticism of the support of the South African teams, of what they've actually brought to the Pro 14. But actually moving that game at the weekend to George was probably a very smart idea, and one that kind of represents what CJ has actually brought to the Pro 14, to the Pro 12 and to Munster.
All right. So we don't normally read out tweets from our colleagues, but John Duggan has just tweeted this. I'm buzzed about Aintree and the Heritage. My betting eye is completely in right now. I can see everything. I think it's going to be a profitable summer. He's going to be in with us on Thursday and Friday this week for your racing tips. So make sure you are tuned and ready to go and subscribe wherever it is that you get your social media. And we will be ready to bring you John's tips on Thursday and Friday this week. Now, the Irish women's national team play the Dutch tonight in Tallaght. It's got a 7 o'clock kickoff, and there is World Cup qualification on the line. Colin Bell was on the show last night. Here he is talking about the gap between the pros and amateur sides.
We have in the squad a lot of young players now. So I'd say 50-50.
Right.
We have 3% home-based. The girls are also coming in on a Monday evening to Abbottstown. The home-based players train with me the last few months. That's been going well. It's also great contact time. So we're getting the balance right, but we need obviously the players that are playing professionally in England or in Germany or the USA. And you can see, that there's a massive difference at times. But now we're trying to, of course, encourage our elite players that are here in Ireland to get more training sessions within their clubs or in their club setup, because that's what we need. You're going to represent your country. You can't get away with it with just training twice a week. There's no chance. So, we're stepping that up. The girls have to step their training up in during the week to maybe 4 or 5 times plus a game. And this is happening at the moment. And that's why we can see that the gap within the squad is closing, which is very, very encouraging for me. And it has to happen. And that's what we're trying to encourage and help and support. So, we have to give the girls guidance on this, and also we're very, always in contact with the clubs to find out how we can improve and work out these things together.
Colin Bell speaking with Joe last night. Ruth Fahy is here. Good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm pretty good. This sounds like it's a bit of a revenge mission for the Dutch, even though it was a draw the last time.
Yeah, which is kind of frightening because you don't want the Dutch coming here looking for a revenge. But it certainly is. In the 0-0 draw last November, the Dutch had an inordinate amount of possession. It was very much backs against the wall. Not only that, but they felt so aggrieved because in the final couple of minutes there was possibly the most clear handball I've ever seen,
right.
And the ref didn't give it.
Yeah.
So after the game, the Dutch players are all around the ref going absolutely crazy. So yeah, as Bell mentioned there, they're out for revenge, and he thinks they're looking for 6-7. And even in the game they played Northern Ireland last Friday, they beat them 7-0 in front of a crowd of over 30,000. So they're very much ready to go, but Bell will have these players so drilled and so organised. They're not going to be easy to break down by any means.
This qualification campaign is the winner goes through automatically.
Yeah.
And then 4 of the best placed second teams get into playoffs.
Exactly, so it's kind of different. So there's 7 groups. So even if you come a runner up, you're not guaranteed to get through. Like you say, it's the 4 best go into the playoffs, where it's actually a home and away leg, and then into the final, a home and away leg. So it's quite a, it's a real arduous journey to get there.
So hang on, there's two playoffs.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, Bell, realistically, when he saw this group, he would have said, we'll be doing well to come second.
Right.
All the hullabaloo is based on the fact that we're still very much in with a chance coming first.
There's the group. There's the group table there.
Yeah, so. There we go. So as you can see at this stage, that's incredible to be up there and joint with the Netherlands. Obviously, goal difference is fairly different, but joint on points is incredible. Ahead of Norway. So if we can get a result tonight, that puts us in a massive position in terms of, and by result, I mean if we can get a draw tonight, that would be incredible. Because really, you're looking at competing with Norway for second place there. And Norway, to be fair, are no easy feat either. They played the Netherlands last year. I think it went right up to the wire, and the Netherlands just about beat them 1-0. I was looking at the possession stats today. Netherlands had about 56 and Norway 44, so it was very much an even game. So it's not as if we're just going to go run over Norway either. So Colin Bell has been saying that over and over, that look, we're in a great position and the hype is excellent, but this is an unbelievably tough group. But it's very much one game at a time, and tonight, it's going to be incredible. It's going to be backs to the walls. I don't want to say parking the bus. At the same time, last November, Ireland had 4 brilliant chances.
Right.
So on the counter, like, it's
Yeah.
very possible to score as well. So anything can happen. The main thing is to keep them out initially. But like, the Dutch have incredible players. I'm obviously really excited about the game, but I'm so excited to see the Dutch live. Like, they're unbelievable athletes as well.
There's somebody who just joined Barca last November. Yeah, who's
Yeah,
she?
that's Liew Martins. She's the reigning European Player of the Year, FIFA Best Player of the Year. I was actually just reading about her there, just looking at her pictures of Messi and Ronaldo. Like, she's possibly the best player at the moment in women's football. She plays in the left wing, and the Irish girls actually kept her relatively quiet last time, which is great. Yeah, we can see here. God, there's like Liew Martins, Vivian Miedema, 21-year-old number 9 there. She's an incredible striker. Van de Sanden, number 7, she is a danger right winger. So Liew Martins is there in the left, number 11. Between Martins and Sanden, Van de Sanden plays for Lyon, who are the reigning Champions League winners. So, like, we're looking at full-time professionals who are celebrities in the Netherlands. It's just a massive test, but the girls showed last November that they're capable. And like I said, they had 4 brilliant chances with Amber Barrett in the first half, where the Dutch just didn't really expect the Irish to come out like that. You can see by their results, like beating Northern Ireland 7-0.
Yeah,
you know,
they crush teams.
Yeah, they crush teams. Like, they go out and crush them. And they tried so many different variations. Like, usually they crush teams on the flanks. So between Martins on the left and Van de Sanden on the right, they always have a huge look. If that doesn't work, Vivian Miedema in the centre, she's 21. She's played 63 times already for the senior side. It's quite a lot. And scored 50 goals. So it's outrageous. She plays for Arsenal. But like, Bell just had this exceptional defensive setup, and they couldn't get through them. So the thing is, the Dutch know what to expect tonight, and they will have come up with ways to penetrate the defence this time. So it'll be just really interesting to see, are the Irish going to be able to adapt as well when the Dutch try something different?
When it comes to someone like Van de Sanden, like Harriet Scott did a really good job in her last time, who's obviously missing tonight. So, like, is that the only big worry we have in terms of team selection, or does it just become such a systemic thing where it doesn't matter who's playing, that Colin Bell will have them set up in such a way that, like, as I say, that the personnel is going to be to a certain extent kind of elementary when it comes to this Dutch team?
That's a good question. I think yes and no. So basically, against Slovakia, that was the question, who's going to come in? Because Harriet Scott did such a good job against Van de Sanden. Surprisingly for me, I actually didn't expect, but Karen Duggan came in at left full, and she ended up getting player of the match, and she was brilliant. I think putting Karen Duggan in there will work. I don't think he could just put anyone in there, because you're talking about the calibre of these players. It's so high that, if you put in another player who was not adaptable and not versatile enough, they would be absolutely ruined. Sure. So it's not a case where he has a personnel set up the system and go. He does need the quality as well. He's very fortunate to have someone like Karen Duggan who can actually go in there and do that job. It's really, really unfortunate that Anya Gorman's not fit. We still don't know really what the problem is there, but she's apparently not going to be playing tonight, which is a real pity, because she's someone like Duggan who's really versatile. They can put her around the pitch. But yeah, he's obviously got them so drilled. They obviously really respect him, but he definitely needs certain quality as well. So you can't just throw them in there and say, look, deal with this Leon star or such. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I'm actually just really nervous about the match. I'm just really excited about it as well. I can't wait to see the Dutch players live.
Is it nervous in the sense that you hope Ireland don't get killed?
Yes, to be honest, yeah, I do hope that. I'm nervous for the girls. I know some of the players. The hype has been incredible coming up to this game. It's been more than I've ever seen, ever. It's like the biggest, without putting pressure on them, it is the biggest game in women's football history. The fact is, I'm expecting a 5,000 capacity crowd as well. I really think that's what's going to happen. I'm nervous because just the quality that they're playing. I know they've done it already, but they were going there with not a hope. There's not a hope, and now the hype is all around. They've shown they can get a result against the European champions. I'm nervous because I'm worried the expectation might break them a little bit. I hope it won't. I think Bell will prepare them that it won't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am nervous about that. I'm a bit nervous about that.
I guess it helps as well when you look at kind of the way the fixtures now pan out, because what you've got there, being realistic, should the Netherlands win tonight, you've got a fascinating kind of mini group there between Ireland and Norway and Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
So what that ultimately gains the Irish team is, after tonight and after the hype, after the capacity crowd, is hopefully a support group that'll carry into the Norway game, which, being realistic, could subsequently become the biggest game in Irish women's football history after this, and getting to that playoffs, because it becomes a journey then. You've already outlined how complicated the playoffs process is and the amount of games that is, so it is a blessing having the Netherlands game now, because it can kickstart a real movement.
I actually don't think it could have fallen more perfectly, to be honest, for Bell's side, only because they got that result against the Dutch last year, because you're right, it does set up perfectly, because if they lose tonight, grand, but they've gathered that momentum now. If the crowd, I hope, turns up, they'll stay with the girls then for the June doubleheader, and it actually works really well when they come against Norway. It's 2 back-to-back games similar to this week. It's a week apart, so the crowd will stay, the interest will stay. I actually think you're spot on there. I think it's just worked out so well. Like I said, the hype has been outrageous. I can't believe it, and I hope the girls can actually use that to get a result tonight. But yeah.
I just want to play you this. This is Colin Bell speaking on the show last night about the issues that the team had a year ago and what impact that's had. Have a look.
Cool.
So far, so good. It's been a really positive year. I mean, first year in charge for you, to say the least, and to be joint top with the Netherlands at this stage of the group, I'm sure is massively pleasing for everyone. You must have been slightly concerned when you arrived just over a year ago and the team were in the midst of that very high-profile situation at Liberty Hall, holding a press conference, making what seemed, certainly on the outside, like some fairly basic demands. I'm sure you were thinking, what's going on here?
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise maybe. I was aware of certain things, but, I honestly said at the time that the first step that the FAI took going into that direction of listening to the players' concerns and showing their intent that they want to build the women's game in Ireland was to appoint a head coach who's full-time. First time ever in the history of the FAI. So that was a big step, and I think that got lost a little bit in all these things. But in end effect, everybody got themselves sorted. The girls and the FAI got together. They have a good deal, good package, and so fortunately for both parties, it was a good thing to get out of the way, and just to move the game forward. The girls reacted very well. The FAI have reacted very well. So I know it's like an anniversary now, a year ago, but I haven't obviously thought about this. I know what happened at that time. We looked ahead, and I concentrate on what's going on the pitch, and things have moved well for us.
Yeah. I mean, obviously he can't go the FAI, the players. He's got to try and tread that balance, and he's done a very cautious and political job of it very well, and the results have been really good, so that kind of helps. But what's the truth? Have things improved enough?
From speaking to the players, they've improved dramatically. Significantly, and they've really felt the change, and it's really helped them in their lifestyles. Have things improved enough? I think it's going to take a couple of years for that to filter down. It's not going to be a sudden thing. Has it improved? Yes, 100%. As you said, Bell did an unbelievable political job. He was put in a really tough position there. But I think the players were quite good in that they really kept him out of it. He just come into the role. In terms of, if you think about it, the girls were taking time off work to go and play, so they're losing money that way. Weren't getting any allowance. We know the whole thing about the tracksuits, whatever. It wasn't even that. It was just about having the foundations to make them better. You could see Bell there. I said it's about moving it forward, and that will take years to trickle down, because it's about the younger girls. And I remember a year ago writing an article about this. It's kind of about the younger generation looking at that and saying, I can not only play for the green jersey, but I can get paid for this, and I don't have to make certain sacrifices. So it's definitely better, and it's only going to get better and get better. Yes, the biggest determinant of whether it's better or not is if and when they qualify for a major tournament, and the fact that we're still in the running is massive. So yeah.
I'm interested in this team and how many of them have played at. So there was an underage tournament that Ireland did well at a couple of years back. That was an under-18s.
It was, I think, was it under-17s? It was in Trinidad and Tobago, the World Cup. I'm trying to think of what year that was. 2010. I think it was 2010. Out of this squad who are remaining...
So not that many.
Not that many. I'm trying to think it was Katie McCabe and that. There was a certain core who were with the senior squad up until about 2 or 3 years ago. A couple still playing in the Women's National League. The likes of Rihanna Jarrett, Emma Hansbury play at Wexford Youths.
Katie McCabe was and Claire Shine was.
Yeah, exactly. So Claire Shine still with Cork. Katie McCabe obviously now is the captain of Ireland. They've lost an awful lot of them. In terms of at international 11, I think Jess Gleeson is at Shelburne now, so they're still very much involved in terms of still with the senior squad. They're actually not far away. Some of them are very much in there, of course, but still involved. But yeah, they've lost a good few.
But it hasn't been as straightforward. Like the pathway, the talent pathway, has been an issue in the past because we obviously don't have our own professional league.
Yeah.
And you went to America on scholarship, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, like clearly, the opportunity for women's football in America is huge. You go, you get an education, it's life-changing experience, and it's balancing that with coming back to play for Ireland and how that system works, or trying to find full-time professional employment with one of the European clubs, while at the same time hoping that the domestic league can improve to a point where something sustainable can exist here.
It's very much a catch-22. I actually forgot to mention Denise O'Sullivan. I think she's involved too, and she's a star player now. She plays pro in the States. It's a catch-22, right? Because I love the Women's National League. I've been involved since its inception in 2011, and I want to see it get better and better. And we've seen it go up and down the last couple of years because players have gone. The likes of Katie McCabe has gone, Denise O'Sullivan has gone. The league has actually weakened a little bit. Although it's getting bigger in terms of numbers, the quality went down slightly for a stage. The biggest problem with the development pathway in Ireland is it goes under 17, under 19 and straight to senior. So we don't catch that in between. There's no under 21, there's no under 23. So say with the lads, it's the under 21. So that time in between, some players go to college in the States. It's happened loads. Don't make the transition back for whatever reason. In the States, you make your decision. You're either getting drafted, you're at the top, or you're gone. So that's where that mentality comes from. Some come back and play in the league. Not everyone, not all of them do. So we are actually losing a pool there in that section, which is, yeah, it's frightening. I think that's one of the things that obviously the FAI, I'm sure they're looking at it. I would hope that they're looking at it.
Shouldn't you be encouraging people to go and saying come back? Like, because it definitely, talking to people over the years, it was like, oh Jesus, the Yanks are coming over here and stealing all our talent. And I'm like, yes, but they're offering like educations which are up there with the best in the world, and it's a massive opportunity. So encourage people to go, but make sure there's like a straight, we will welcome you back, as opposed to you know, you're done, that's it now.
Well, not everyone wants to go either as well, so there has to be an option there for those that don't want to go, to have as similar as possible set up in Ireland. So obviously, in terms of finances, there is no money here to offer the same scholarship or whatever, but there has to be some, like, we could do better. We could definitely do better in that sense. I would recommend people, if the opportunity comes and they're good enough, and if it's a Division 1 college or a top college, to go, because you're right, it's an unbelievable opportunity. Full scholarships everywhere on offer. You get treated like a professional. Like, you're literally playing like a pro. Like, we were training every day, matches twice a week. College, everything was kind of structured around you as a player. You were given so much assistance. So for some people, it'll suit them extremely well. But yeah, some people don't want to go, and for them, I've spoken about this before. For them, they need a bit more help, a bit more of a helping hand, and even just advice, or even, you know, academics isn't always people's strong point, but that college system can also build a player to get back into senior squad. And when there is that lack of under 21 or under 23, there needs kind of something else that people need a little bit of help with. But the college system over in the States is so good. But the likes of, for example, Megan Connolly is Florida State University. I think she's coming to her final years. We want to bring her back now, but she's too good at the moment to come back to our National League. So Megan Campbell was Florida State, and now she's playing with Man City. Right. So even keeping them close by would be nice in that kind of sense. But so that's up to our league to catch up, so they want to play there. And just, pardon my ignorance, but would you make more money playing football as a pro when you leave college in the States, or in the UK, or in Europe? Or so when you finish college at that stage? To be honest, much for muchness, because you're not making huge amounts of money. Like in the UK, in the Women's Super League, I think the top players there would be on like 70 grand sterling, right? So I was actually reading the Times this morning. Lika Martins is reportedly on 180 grand with Barcelona. So in Europe now, I think there is money there to be made. Like, you're making 6 figures as a pro.
Yeah.
That's an awful long way from where, happy days. Like, I'd take that. Anyone would take that. The States, I think, will be more online with the UK salaries, but then there's sponsorship and all that. So, yeah, you can make a decent living, yeah, like pretty much, yeah.
So the European leagues would actually be a really good route back for Irish internationals who then, you know,
100%.
can be scouted properly by Colin Bell and in touch with the FAI.
Yeah, you're looking at top clubs like I said, Lyon, Barcelona, in the UK, like the Women's Super League has gone from strength to strength. They're going fully professional now. There's a new policy that it's only recent actually that they switched to that.
The UK.
UK, that they have to be full-time pros. So in effect, the salaries will go up and up. So yeah, you can certainly make a living. The Women's National League, literally we'd need a couple more hours to talk about it. There's so much more that can be done and needs so much more support. I wouldn't say it's struggling, it was struggling, and now it's kind of coming back into force. We've gone from 7 up to 8 teams this year, so Limerick have come in this year. But you've heard Colin Bell talk, he wants his players training more. He's very much, players need to train every day, right?
Yeah.
So it's very difficult for him because he's got the domestic players completely amateur versus his pro players. He said there the gap is actually narrowing, which is good. So he's trying to build his senior squad, he's trying to bring up the under-17s, and he's trying to make the league better as well.
Yeah,
so he's doing an awful lot. Like, it's really tough. You need more resources, more personnel, like same old story.
Is there a sign of a 21s or 23s league coming down the tracks?
Absolutely not, no, not at all. A league, is it?
Yeah.
No, there's an under-17 league starting this year. There'll be a shortened league this year and then there'll be a full league next year. So Bell has come in and he's looking at youth, like he's looking at long-term development. So he's managing the Irish under-17 team. He's brought 3 of those into the senior squad, which they're brilliant little players, which is great. And I'm sure he's helped set up the under-17 league, but I think rather than under-21 league, I think an under-21 national team or even an Irish B team or something, just to close that gap between 19s and senior, because I think you're just losing an awful lot there in between, yeah.
It seems like the natural progression. So say if talent was no question and you're the best footballer in Ireland, it seems like the best way of progressing is actually going to the States then. It's not actually going straight to Europe. It seems like go to the States, get your education, because it seems like the developmental facilities there are better. And then it seems that they're so in touch, or Europe is so in touch with the best players with the US colleges that you will get your move.
Yeah, if you want to go away, it's a perfect setup for you, because women's football... They talk about in men's football how you should fall back in education. That's even more important in women's football because there's actually absolutely nothing guaranteed. So
you should be using the football to get your education.
Yeah, exactly.
Clipped in on the inverse.
Yeah, you can use it. Like, that's what I did. I was offered, full scholarship. Just use it to go. And I use it for the experience. Like, it was great to go. So you see, I don't want to agree fully with you there, because then they're all going to go and leave the National League. So that's not what I want. But if the opportunity comes knocking for someone who's just done their leaving cert to go, and they do want to go, it's an awful, it's a very frightening thing to go all the way to the States for 4 years, possibly by yourself. So lots of people don't want to go, but if the opportunity's there, you want to go. Yeah, if you're going to a top college, I would say that, like the example of Florida State, top college, they're being drafted into the Pro League. That'll make you a great player. We can always come back to our lovely little National League, which is hopefully getting better and better,
Yeah, it's finding that, it's having a mature relationship with that system, as opposed to America bad, Ireland good, you got to stay here, and then people end up getting pissed off both ways.
But it's right what you mentioned. It's about kind of bringing them back in when they want to come back. So the likes of Noelle Murray left last year to go play with Glasgow, for playing pro for a year. She's come back now this year, right? So for whatever reason, she's decided, she's had a professional time and she wants to come back, like get her back in and get her involved in the league. That's happened. Like Claire Shine was abroad as well. She's come back in the league. So you have to allow these players to go to play professionally. That's a dream many of them have since they're young. But if there's any sign they want to play in Ireland, keep them here and look after them. Yeah. That's the main thing. Yeah.
I mean, centrally contracting a bunch of players to the FAI. Yeah. Obviously, that takes a lot of money, and suddenly,
it's a whole new ball game then.
It is,
but
exactly. I mean that would revolutionise it if you'd two players at each club who were full-time professionals.
That would be incredible. Even semi-pro. There's been quite a bit of talk about that in recent times, but it hasn't come to anything. And I think another big thing, again, a discussion for another day, is that PFAI looks after, obviously, the men's side and the women's senior national team. There's absolutely nobody looking after the players of the Women's National League. So they're just completely isolated.
Because they're amateur. Is that why
exactly, because they're amateur.
Right.
It's just completely run by the FAI, and because it's so new and because there's so many issues with the other, like the League of Ireland and the First and Premier Division, it's very much third tier. Yeah, it's something you get to if you can, and that's the problem. It just needs somebody to take it and prioritise it, or a body to look after something. But yeah, something needs to be a little bit different.
All right, so you're predicting backs against the wall, park the bus, raucous atmosphere tonight, and maybe they might just squeak a draw?
Yeah.
Be delighted with that?
That's exactly how I would describe it, yeah.
All right, Ruth, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this
Thank
morning.
you very much for having me.
Okay, so let's move on. Hurling with Tommy Walsh last night, talking about TJ Reid growing into the player he is. Here he is, suited and booted.
Well, he wasn't always being picked. Like he only came really irregular around 0-13, 0-40. He was kind of injured in 0-13.
Yeah.
He got the bad injury, I think, in the All-Ireland final in 0-12. But it was 2014 really met him. So he I don't know what age he was at that stage. His late 20s, I'd say, before he was, and
that's why I'm half wondering what Cody made of him during those early to mid 20s years.
Yeah, so he just saw him as a brilliant player, but a guy I reckon that wasn't going to, when TJ wasn't in the game, because he can't always be in the game.
Yeah.
What's he going to add to the team? And that's where the questions were asked of TJ, and he's been answering them since probably 0-14. I noticed yesterday, I was at the game, I was behind the goal, the Ted Carroll stand, the new stands in Nolan Park, and there was one stage where TJ lost the ball, and he chased, I forget who he chased, but he chased one of the Tipperary players. I'd say it could have been Brendan Maher, and he chased him 30-40 yards. He didn't hook him or anything, but instead of Brendan Maher getting the point, which these Tipperary guys love doing, solo in, big point that lifts the whole stand, TJ followed him. He wasn't right up against him at the start, but by the end of it, he basically hounded him at the 2 or 3 Kilkenny lads. They took the ball off him, back down the field. That's what TJ Reid started to do. So when he wasn't in the game, he was able to do something, and suddenly he's back in the game. The confidence is up, Joe, and on you go again.
Yeah,
that's what turned TJ Reid, and that's what Brian Cody, I think, changed in TJ.
Yeah, hurler of the year at the moment, if you were naming it right now, TJ Reid.
It's got to be, doesn't it? He, as we discussed yesterday, Kilkenny have run the table, TJ Reid has run the table, scored double figures in all his 6 starts in the National League this year. Did pretty well off the bench as well whenever he came on in 1 or 2 games, and he's just been immaculate. I tweeted about this the other day. I was genuinely worried about 50-60 minutes into the tip game on Sunday that TJ Reid is actually a robot. That it's like Will Smith and iRobot, that if you just peel back a layer of skin you just see a metallic sheen.
I haven't seen iRobot. Is that the twist?
Maybe. I don't want to spoil anything. I'm trying to think. Have I picked the wrong movie there where Will Smith actually isn't a robot and he's actually a real man? Anyway, that was a tangent on probably something that's not true. Like I'm still not sure. Maybe he still is a robot. Maybe he's not fully human. But maybe we'll do a bit of journalism into that to find out whether or not he actually is a real human. Yeah. He's laser-like in his free taking. First off, he's laser-like from open play. He is absolutely essential to any chance Kilkenny have of winning the All-Ireland this year. And does it go too far to say that potentially Kilkenny were never as reliant on Henry when Henry was in his pomp?
I'm sorry, I got interrupted there. Will Smith is a robot-hating Chicago cop in iRobot.
I must be thinking of a very different movie then.
Unless there's a twist at the end where he actually, turns out he is a robot, self-hating robot. That would be a good twist. We've fixed that for you. Jason Ford is probably the hurler of the year at the moment.
Yeah, good point.
On balance.
Good point.
But TJ's right there, and because they win, that's how these awards go.
Yeah, but come back to that. Like the Kilkenny depend on Shefflin as much, or was Shefflin as key part of the scoring outlook and the Kilkenny's chances of success?
No. At the moment, no. As this team is dependent on
TJ Reid.
TJ.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's have TJ win All Ireland like this before because we're just talking about the league at the moment.
Yeah, it is true. League is league, Ger.
League is league. There's the photos of my robot, and there's no sense that Will Smith is anything other than flesh and blood. Will Smith stars Del Spooner. What a great name. So
your takeaway from today, Ger, is watch a movie twice before making a cultural reference to it. Don't just watch it once and make a cultural reference to it 10 years later.
The other stuff that we wanted to talk about in the Examiner today was the GPA.
It is. Horan must have GPA fundraising on his radar, reads the headline in John Fogarty's article today. So just to read the opening couple of lines here. In case you missed it, the GP had quite a tea party in Boston last Friday evening, with tables going for as much as $50,000. The wine flowed as the Greenbacks mounted their second such dinner in the city. The GPA's fundraising endeavours stateside last year came to almost €650,000, and it wouldn't be a surprise if something similar was on the cards this time around. So it sets the scene nicely for a discussion about the GPA, their escapades in the United States. They're making a hell of a lot of money. And maybe there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe there is a huge pie here, and Gaelic Games related organisations still haven't eaten all the pie. And, the GPA are more than welcome to just fly over and eat their slice.
Yeah, because obviously we were in New York recently, and we were talking to the chairman of the New York County Board, and he was asking for a 2-year derogation on the GPA and counties coming to New York to raise funds. And I think that had been agreed because they obviously are trying to pay off Gaelic Park. But a huge amount of money is washing around the system in America. We were told that up to 200 grand was being spent on the preparation of club teams for the championship. That's a lot of money. And if you have like 10 or 12 club teams, that's not the average spend. That might have been at the upper end of it. But there's a huge amount of money to be tapped into. And then you've got the counties going over themselves who don't publicise it and who aren't being attacked for doing it. Like, Wexford went over and had a great time, and I think that a bunch of old Wexford supporters in New York were only too thrilled to see Lee Chin and Davey, and I don't know if there were a couple of others. There were a couple of the legends from the team.
Ned Wheeler, I think, went over as well.
So, like, is it really stealing money from local GAA in New York if Wexford go over and talk to, or if Boston, if they go over there and raise cash? I mean, I think we probably need a more mature conversation around this than GPA bad, counties bad, local GA awesome, when there's loads of money slushing around that system that is not being accounted for.
Yeah, essentially a new generation of immigrants arrived in New York, maybe at the height of the crash, whatever, 5 years ago, let's say. Granted, it's not as big as the immigration was in the 20th century, but still. So what you've got is these people who go over with an identity of their own county, where you go over as a Wexford person, and maybe if you set up shop there and you live there for the rest of your life, your kids will then become GAA fans, but they'll become New York GAA people, and you'll still be whatever, the Wexford GAA man or woman. And whenever Wexford comes over, you'll be the person who gives them money. But because GAA is so ingrained in your family, your kids might then become, the people who identify with New York GAA. That is their GAA team. And it's very hard to rob somebody of their own identity. Like, if I was living over in New York and Kerry GAA came over and I had disposable income on the level here that it would take to buy a table.
You're getting your photograph taken.
Of course I am. Of course I'm going. And in fact, I would feel stronger about Kerry GAA if I'd lived in New York, probably, because you cling on to any sort of cultural piece of iconry you have about home, and Kerry GAA would be the thing that I would identify with more than almost anything else. So I can see why the money is there to be spent, and if you're a county board, well, why aren't you going over? Why aren't you tapping into this resource which is just ripe for picking? I can see where New York GAA comes from, but maybe there's a little more patience. Maybe in a few years, people will start to identify more with New York GAA. The counterpoint to that, though, is the fact that there's been Irish immigrants in New York forever. And if it hasn't happened by now, when is it likely to ever happen?
Well, stop spending loads of money on bringing lads over in the summer to play 3 or 4 games.
Well, there's that, but then there's...
Put that money into the coaching.
Yeah, but I guess they identify more...
Back to me when you do that.
Yeah. They probably identify more with their own championship over there, though, today, instead of like the county team, the New York GAA team. That's probably, like, you will always be viewed by what your
club team,
by your blue ribbon team, like whatever that is. And so these people who are pumping money into whatever Kerry GAA in New York or Donegal GAA in New York, those teams, they probably just feel that competitive edge. They don't see a competitive thing in the New York GAA team because quite often it's only one game a year and
it's meaningless.
Exactly. They want some sort of... They want a carrot, like they want something to fight for, to actually compete in. And I would say if you're involved with a GAA team in New York but not with New York GAA, what's the incentive?
Yeah, and how do you feel about people coming to fundraise? Like, do you care?
Well, maybe it's not as big an issue for them because they've got 200 grand already in the coffers there to spend on people coming over, and like maybe there's also an element that they are from those counties that they actually identify with. I'm not quite sure what the situation is there. I don't think so.
No, it's a flag of convenience.
Is it? Yeah? Okay, that's fair enough. Then that point was irrelevant that I was about to make.
In some cases, it's Were you thinking about Terminator?
Maybe I don't.
Were you?
Well, no, I wasn't thinking about Terminator. Clearly, like
or Terminator 2.
The,
You know he's a robot in Terminator 2.
Yes.
And Terminator. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a robot in Terminator.
No, I wasn't. I don't know. There's something more.
I thought that was going to be an image of Terminator there to say, this is what a half man, half robot looks like.
Terminator was too obvious a reference to make, so I went to iRobot. I reached and I failed.
Well, that was a bit. Anyway, let's move on. That was a tweet from Cliona Foley, by the way, recommending that you listen to Off the Bench. They're speaking with @Tom J. Gary on Man United's recent decision to field a senior women's team and where women can make a decent living now in European club football. So, Off the Bench, our podcast. Make sure you download and subscribe to that wherever you get your podcasts. That's pretty much all we've got time for on the show tonight. It's going to be Miguel Delaney ahead of Manchester City against Liverpool. Dan McDonald's post-match thoughts from the Women's World Cup qualifier in Tallaght. Tim Vickery on Gabriel Batistuta, and Paul Rouse also in studio talking some history as well. So promises to be a really good show tonight. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Remember, all of our OTB AM is brought to you this morning with Air, the home of Air Sport. Get amazing live sporting content free with Air Broadband. Good luck.
OTB AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.